Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Corporal Jack Andrew. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Please be seated if able. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here, we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest, wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Claude Belmore Gallaway. Claude Gallaway was born in 1889 in Goulburn, New South Wales. He was one of 9 children born to William James Gallaway, a school teacher, and his wife, Jessie. Claude received his education at Tamworth Public School before moving to Queensland with his mother and siblings. He later worked in Toowoomba as an insurance clerk, which he was doing when the First World War broke out. Claude Gallaway enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 9th of February 1915. He was assigned to the 25th Battalion with the rank of private. He embarked for active service at the end of June 1915, sailing from Brisbane on board the troop ship Aeneas. Private Gallaway joined his unit on Gallipoli in September 1915. By this time, the campaign had descended into a stalemate, and Gallaway's time was primarily spent in defensive duties in the trenches. In December 1915, all Allied troops were evacuated back to Egypt. Gallaway and his comrades embarked for the Western Front, reaching Marseille on the 19th of March 1916, the first Australian unit to arrive. Later that month, they travelled north towards the French and Belgian border, entering the trenches on the 4th of April 1916. Gallaway's unit undertook periods of training behind the lines, as well as short stints on duty in the trenches. In July, the 25th was sent south to the Somme Valley to take part in the advance on German positions around the French village of Pozières. They entered the front lines around the village on the 28th of July in 1916, in preparation for attack under cover of darkness before dawn. They began their advance just after midnight on the 29th, tasked with taking 2 lines of German trenches on Pozières Ridge. In 5 waves, the men of the 25th jumped the parapets, immediately coming under murderous machine gun fire from enemy lines. As they pressed forward, Gallaway and his comrades were hit by the enemy's artillery, as well as fire from mortars, just as they reached their first objective. By the time they made it to the second trench, the 25th was so outnumbered that they were forced to dig in for cover. Private Herbert Harris, who was also caught in the fighting at Pozières, described the battle. Imagine men dug in a few feet into the ground and shells falling just like rain. Trenches blown up and men digging for dear life to rebuild them, or rescuing their comrades who were buried, and in most cases, the rescuers were also buried by shells. When entering the trenches, we were bombarded with tear and gas shells, which made us wear our gas helmets. It is almost impossible to see and hard to breathe. I've heard of officers and men saying that the landing and the Lone Pine battle at Gallipoli were a picnic compared to this last fight. Shortly after, they received their orders to retreat to their own lines. By the morning, the 25th Battalion had suffered some 340 casualties. Among the missing was Private Claude Gallaway. With the possibility that he had been taken prisoner, Gallaway remained listed as missing for 12 months. During this time, no further news of his fate was received. In July 1917, a court of inquiry determined that he had most likely been killed in action during his unit's attack at Pozières. Gallaway's final resting place was never found. Today, he is commemorated on the Australian Memorial at the Villa Bretonneau among more than 10,000 others who have no known grave. Private Claude Gallaway was 26 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name, listed on the Villa Bretonneau Memorial, is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Claude Belmore Gallaway, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.